Yasuo received the huge buff, buffing his base AD damage and the ultimate. And on top of that, they're buffing lethal tempo and chargeblade. So guess what? This champion in the right hands, if you are good on this champion and you have mastered him, this champion is S plus tier right now. Super strong. And I don't know, I always tell you guys this, base AD buffs are crazy. Hey, what's up guys, Darkbreaker here, and in today's video I'm going to introduce you to my tier list for the new patch 3.4a. As you guys can see here, these are the changes. We have small changes here and there, especially Camille is getting buffed, Gwen got a buff as well, Nautilus got a buff, Yasuo got a huge buff, and then some nerfs as well for Ahri, Echo, Evelynn, Karma, Kassadin, a change for Pyke, and then some item changes as well. Riftmaker is getting buffed, Chargeblade is getting buffed, Lethal Tempo is getting buffed, and the new support items are getting nerfed. So I will cover all these changes, and in this tier list I'm also including my opinion about the new champion Yone. But yeah, guys, remember I always have to say it because some people will nitpick. This is my personal, subjective opinion tier list. It's an orientation for you guys. You guys can look and see, okay, Darkbreaker is rating this like this. Okay, that's his opinion, and you guys can write your opinion or what you guys would do differently. Yeah, down below in the comments. But I think I have a decent, pretty good idea about how the meta is right now. Obviously, there might be some changes here and there, like one rank difference or something, because there are some explanations where I'm talking about, okay, if this champion has a high skill ceiling and you have this champion mastered, you could potentially play him at S plus level and the average player would play him like an S or A plus level. There are a few champions where I will say it like that. I'm talking about the maximum potential that you can bring out of one champion in this tier list. For example, we have Yasuo, we have Aurelia, we have champions like Camille, I would say even Gwen, that are not as easy to play and you need to know all the matchups, etc. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this tier list and you think this tier list is good, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, because yeah, it doesn't cost you anything and it's gonna push the video out so more people can see it, and it's obviously gonna support me as well. So appreciate anyone who's just, I don't know, if you like, that helps. If you write a comment, that also helps. But yeah, or you share it, even better. But yeah, let's get started with the Baron Lane tier list. So for the Baron Lane tier list, as you guys can see, Gwen received a buff. I had her previously as plus tier already, and I still think this champion is really good, and her carry potential in the late game is absolutely crazy. They buffed her base HP, they buffed the base damage from her first ability as well. They nerfed Jungle Gwen's passive, which is okay, which doesn't matter for Baron Lane Gwen. I think this champion is an excellent duelist, and actually against most matchups you can do really fine. Jax, Jace are probably the hardest matchups, but even against the Jax you can do okay. And later on you're gonna outscale the Jace anyways, and you're just gonna run him down. The key strength is definitely, okay, you need to know all the matchups, and then later on, once you have like 3 items, remember Riftmaker is also getting buffed, that's when you are super strong, and you guys will see the amount of sustain this champion has and the amount of damage she has on the ultimate is actually fucking cracked. So she might be tricky to learn, she might be hard to master, because you need to understand, okay, her laning phase is not the greatest. She has some hard matchups as well, but overall she has a solid laning phase against most champions. She's excellent against tanky champions. She has true damage, and her late game damage and her sustain are actually cracked in my opinion. So if you're a really good Gwen player and you know what you have to do, how to play the laning phase, how to play certain matchups, how to play the teamfight flanking or front to back, depending on what you want to do, I think the potential, like, I don't think right now most people haven't realized or haven't accomplished the full potential of Gwen right now, because obviously this champion just recently got released, so a lot of people don't know how to play her correctly yet, or haven't mastered her like a one-trick pony yet. She's 2 weeks out or something, so give her more time, and you guys will see once people have mastered her how strong she's gonna be. My opinion, S+ tier. Next one is gonna be Camille. The opinions might differ on this champion. I think if you're, I think the basic consensus is, or the basic opinion from a lot of people is that Camille is pretty hard to play or not that beginner friendly. And I definitely have to say, if you have mastered Camille and know how to play this champion, knowing how to split push, knowing how to use the ultimate correctly and pick off people, and especially now with the buff that she received on the second ability, I think this champion is S+ tier if you play her correctly and you maximize the full potential of Camille. If you are like the average Camille player, probably just S tier. Same applies for Gwen, by the way. But if you are a good Camille player, I still think she has amazing mobility, she has the split push potential, she has the pick off potential in team fights, she has the level 13 true damage with Conqueror doing tons of damage. Laning phase, one of the safest laning phase, super consistent, and she only has like a few matchups that are really hard for her. I guess Fiora is hard, Jax is hard, and the others are all pretty doable. Riven is also kind of tricky. But she can do fine against these hard matchups as well if you play it correctly. Max the second ability and just keep poking them and chunk them down, and then maybe try to go for the all-in. But yeah, very safe laning phase, good team fighting, etc. So full potential Camille, I still think she is very good in my opinion. I know, for example, Random put her A tier, but fuck Random. Fuck Random. I don't know. He was also the guy when I told him Jax is OP. He was like, nah, Jax is not that OP. He was like, nah, he's not that OP. But Jax is also OP. I've tried him a bit more, and I also see in competitive he's still highly picked, by the way. Since I'm already talking about him, let's move him. Jax also still very, very strong right now. Laning phase, I thought his laning phase would be weak, but it's still decently. And the Grasp Jax is just so hard to deal with. And like I said, he is one of the best scalings. He is insane at 1 versus 9ing actually, because he's a hyper carry champion. Same kind of applies for Fiora, but the advantage of Fiora is her early game is much better than Jax's early game. Her scaling is also insane. I would say her team fighting is weaker than Jax, because Jax has his third ability and the ultimate, which are really good in team fights. And the first ability is much better gap closing ability than Fiora's lunge. So Fiora, one of the greatest duelists, insane early game, insane duelist in the early and late game. And if you know and if you master the split pushing capability of Fiora, she is in my opinion super strong. I have a really good video on Fiora uploaded already, but I feel like not that many people have watched it, because I've explained how to play split pushing and how to play the macro for split pushing correctly as a Fiora, and I think the video is pretty great, and I wish more people would have watched it, because I feel like a lot of times when I'm doing like super educational stuff, a lot of people are missing it out because it's not as clickbaity maybe, or it just doesn't get recommended as much, and then a lot of people are not seeing, oh wow, there is an insanely educational video that a lot of people are not watching. I'm like, Fitz Batman shit. Okay, next one. Gragas. I've uploaded recently Cosmic Drive Tank Gragas build, and I think it's absolutely cracked. Gragas has probably one of the safest laning phases. He is insane in team fights, and he just provides so much damage, so much crowd control, and also decent play potential. With the ultimate, you can catch people. With the E-Flash combo, you can catch people off guard as well. Or E-Flash into ultimate, also very good combo. But yeah, Gragas, early game very solid, and then late game, once you have like 3-4 items, you become a tanky CC machine god that is pretty much unkillable. Like, you have Road of Age, Iceborne Gauntlet, a Bramble Vest into Thornmail maybe later on, Cosmic Drive, Abyssal Mask, and then and Gargoyle as well, and then you have your third ability every 2 seconds or something. That does, like, all these abilities have so much base damage. Then you have the Road of Age, which gives you 120 AP, and then Cosmic Drive, which also gives you like 80 AP, and Iceborne Gauntlet 30 ability haste, Cosmic Drive 30 ability haste, Abyssal Mask 15 ability haste. If you guys want to run Hunter Genius, another 15 ability haste. It's just crazy. I would say 2 items, you won't notice the power yet, but 3-4 items, you will notice the power in teamfights, how you are pretty much unkillable, and you're doing so much damage, and you're just dash, 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 second ability dash, second ability dash, second ability dash, and the more armor you have, the more damage you will do thanks to the Spellblade of Frozen or Iceborne Gauntlet. So I actually love this build, and I think it's so fucking cracked. And I also think people are not abusing this yet. I feel like this is such, like, if I was a bigger fan of Gregor's, I would spam this non-stop, because it's actually such a strong pick and such a strong champion, and tank as well. Next one is gonna be Wukong. Very safe laning phase, super strong with Grass plus Sandra, and amazing team fighting as well. Jace, probably one of the strongest laners, both in mid lane and in the Baron lane. He has the range factor, and Hullbreaker Jace is a pain in the ass to deal with, and a lot of times you will just secure the Hullbreaker with the Hullbreaker the first turret very early on. If you play Jace correctly, I would say he's pretty high. Playing him to decent level is easy, but playing him to high and good level requires high skill ceiling, knowing how to space correctly in the laning phase, how to freeze the lane, and how to punish and zone the opponent perfectly. That requires perfect spacing, and I think that's pretty hard. It's pretty hard because I only know a few people that do it to a really good level. For example, Random, who is absolutely cracked on Jace, but for example, if I play Fiora against Jace, it's literally unplayable. But if I play Fiora against a decent or average Jace, it's totally doable. But against a good Jace, this matchup is not playable at all. For example, and that's all about good spacing. So Jace, high skill ceiling to master him and do the laning phase, wave management perfectly. But honestly, if you are that good that you can space and do good wave management on Jace like that, then you're probably pro level. Honestly, if you're that good to pull him off like that, to that degree that I'm talking about, then that's pro level wave management and spacing. It's not easy. It's not easy. That's what I'm saying. Only a few people are doing it to a very high level. Next one is going to be Renekton. Renekton, in my opinion, one of the most solid and versatile Baron laners. Very strong in the early game as a duelist, insanely good in team fighting, and also great decent duelist and great snowballer. But I can definitely see the weakness that if you're falling behind, you will struggle. If you are Renekton that is falling behind, you will struggle, because it's a champion that is meant to dominate at every stage of the game. There are some matchups where you're obviously gonna fall off against a Jax, for example, or maybe even Fiora. But overall, I would say you have more value in teamfights in comparison. Gargoyle, Black Cleaver, Sterox Gage, Death Dance, Renekton, jumping into the teamfight. It's just so valuable because the ultimate gives you HP, then you have the Gargoyle shield as well, the Sterox Gage shield. It's you are very good at soaking a lot of damage. Riven. Riven is, in my opinion, a very, very strong solo queue pick, because it's a snowball pick, and it's such a lane dominant champion that if you manage to get a first blood, you're probably gonna end up 10-0 in the game, and she has tons of mobility and tons of damage as well. Okay, Seth received the buff last patch. I think he is a very good juggernaut, super tanky, and amazing team fighting. Akali is moving up to the S+ tier, thanks to the Riftmaker buff and the Infinity Orb buff. I think she is actually, laning phase wise, the biggest problem was for her the matchup against Hullbreaker champions with Divine Sandra, that it's gonna be very hard for her to hold that lane in the mid and late game. But now with the buffs on these items or with the new items, Akali becomes so strong, and her team fighting, her carry potential is actually crazy. Does tons of damage. It's actually crazy. Rift Maker, Infinite Top, Death Cap, boom, 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 one shot, one shot, one shot. Next one is gonna be Yone. I didn't manage to get that many games on this champion, but for now, my opinion for this champion is gonna be a solid S tier. I think his laning phase is actually pretty solid against most matchups. He has great teamfight potential, and his late game is crazy in team fighting. Question is, how good is Yone against Hardbreaker champions that are building tanky? How good is he against a Jax late game, a Fiora late game, or maybe a Sion late game? I've played one game against Sion, and I've definitely noticed early game I was winning, but in the late game, or in the mid-late game, you will struggle. The biggest problem is the macro advantage that Sion has. He has the Hullbreaker pressure onto you, and he can join team fights with this ultimate. Maybe you have to get Divine Sunray early on, or you have to get Mortal Reminder early on. I need to test him more, but I think for now he's a solid S tier, with maybe higher potential, because Lethal Tempo is getting buffed, chargeblade is getting buffed, so in this patch he is even better right now than beforehand. But yeah, he's definitely, if he falls behind, he's fucked, and he needs a lot of items to get going. So for now, I think S tier, and we will see for the next tier list if my opinion is gonna change, and maybe I'm gonna rate him higher or maybe even lower, but I think he's gonna stay S tier. Unless they're buffing him. If they're buffing him even more, maybe I'm gonna put him S+ tier. Diana, in my opinion, very solid laner right now. Go Road of Age, go Nashor's Tooth, get Rift Maker, Death Cap, or you're skipping Nashor's Tooth. It's really up to you. I think laning phase, super fine if you guys need AP damage. And then in team fight, she is really, really cracked. Sion! Sion is good in team fighting, tanky juggernaut with a lot of core control. And he's also pretty good in the side lane as a split pusher. I'm thinking right now. I mean, he's overall he has a decent package. Like, he does everything super fine, and the only downside I see is he has a lot of matchups where he struggles, and he fought off against a bunch of champions in the side lane. Let's just say, for example, Gwen, Fiora, Jax. These champions just outscale you completely, and then you can't do anything later on. But I mean, it depends on the player, to be fair. Garen, super consistent, tanky champion, does well in the lane, and is also decent in team fights, with his ultimate and being a frontliner. Malphite super solid against AD champions, does well in the laning phase, gets outscaled, but he's super good in team fights with the ultimate. Aurelia high skill ceiling, and you need a lot of matchup knowledge. I would say this champion has the potential to carry games 1 versus 9, but at the same time, she's hard to play and tricky to pull off, and she struggles against a lot of matchups. Shen, okay. Shen is, in my opinion, pretty good. He has a decent laning phase. He has the taunt in team fights. He has the ultimate with a split push advantage, macro advantage, and to teleport and join in. But at the end of the day, he's a tank. And tanks are not good at carrying games 1 vs 9. If you have bad teammates, you are not gonna win. And you're also falling off or get outscaled by a lot of Divine Sunray split pushers. Next one is gonna be Darius. Darius is still a strong juggernaut with good 1 vs 9 carry potential, but I think the meta right now doesn't fit him necessary, because there is so much mobility and poking going on, and he just gets kited a lot of times. I think the biggest problem is the meta just doesn't fit him right now. Next one is Kassadin. Kassadin received another nerf, which actually hurts his Baron lane a lot. This is gonna hurt his Baron laning phase. because the second ability has now 2 seconds longer cooldown, so it's gonna be harder for him to just last hitting and poking people down, but he's still one of the best scaling champions at the end of the day. Tryndamer, I'm putting us down here because I'm thinking this guy could be a secret underrated pick in this new patch. Chargeblade is getting buffed, Lethal Tempo is getting buffed. These buffs are very good for Tryndamer that is running both items. And Tryndamer is honestly a very underrated pick. I think, okay, he has some matchups where he struggles. Jax counters him. Stat is hard. Sion, Garen, Malphite are also hard for him. But I would say if you are not playing against a tanky matchup and you can run them down, and if they're not stacking armor, early game, some matchups pretty hard, but scaling wise, he is actually one of the best duelists. Only problem is his team fighting is not the greatest, especially if you play against these high mobility poking compositions. Karma, Ezreal, Morgana, Free Cancer, you can't do shit. These type of team comps are also the pain in the ass for Darius right now. Morgana with the binding, Karma boosts everyone up with the movement speed, Ezreal is hard to catch, Lucian, Vayne, all these champions have too much mobility and Darius can kill them. Next one is gonna be Yasuo. Yasuo actually received a pretty big buff on this new patch. Also, like I said, Lethal Tempo and Chargeblade got a buff. So I think he is not that bad in terms of, okay, value in teamfights. He can be really good. Laning phase kinda tricky. Against some matchups he will struggle for sure. But I think he can do fine against a lot of matchups, doing 1v1 and try to scale. And then once he has like 3 items, he's really strong actually. Pantheon! Pantheon early game, super strong. Great snowballer, but I've played him recently a few times in the Baron lane. The biggest issue is still, if the game goes beyond 12 minutes, you're falling off like a truck being a minion afterwards. So I'm not a fan of Pantheon just because of the fact a lot of games are going late and this champion just falls off completely, and then you just rely on your teammates to carry you later on. Teemo, strong lane bully and decent in teamfights if you can set up shrooms. Nautilus, decent in the laning phase, good in teamfights with this crowd control. Mundo, decent in the laning phase, good tanky frontline for your teammates. J4, decent in the laning phase, good in teamfights, pretty tanky, has a lot of crowd control. Akshan, strong lane bully, good against certain melee matchups. Downside is he's very squishy and he can be punished pretty hard by the enemy jungler. Cannon, great in teamfights actually. Early game also good, but he falls off in the side lane. Olaf, a very situational pick in the Baron lane that is kinda snowball reliant, and you only want to pick him into tanky compositions and poke compositions that rely on crowd control. Nasus playstyle is not that good in solo queue. AFK farming champion that is super good in the late game, but overall struggles in the laning phase against a lot of champions. Graves just doesn't fit the meta right now, very bad in teamfights, super scaling just like Nasus, and laning phase laning phase with Hullbreaker Rush is okay though. Singe can be pretty good right now in teamfights. Has amazing scaling, but his early game is still very slow and pretty weak against a lot of matchups. Vayne and Lucian have the same explanation as Akshan, but they are not as strong in the early game and they are easily or more easier to punish than the Akshan. Kayle, surprisingly, in China, she has the highest win rate in solo queue both for Baron lane and mid lane. Personally, I still think in high elo, it's too easy to punish this champion. She's like one of the most squishiest champions, especially in the early game. And it's very easy to dive her and get this champion to 05. And you need like 3-4 items minimum, level 10 plus. Best case, level 15, try to get into the late game and then you're strong. But beforehand, it's a champion where you have to be a masochist to play this or main this champion. Because I don't see any other way. I think mid lane she's okay, but Baron lane, if you play in Baron lane, you're crazy. Because I guarantee you, Every time I play this champion, I'm in the lane 1 versus 3 and they just keep diving me. Her early game is absolutely dog shit, and it's just so easy to make her 0-5 and fuck her completely over. Okay, let's get started with the jungle part. For S plus tier, I don't think there are any major changes. Everything stays around the same in my opinion. Shyvana still very good 1 vs 9 hyper carry jungler. Power farm your way to the 1 vs 9 potential. Wukong also great ganker, very good in team fighting. Very good in team fights. Then Olaf. Okay, Don shared one of his Yone pentakill gameplays to me, so we're gonna spectate this one. Olaf, very good hyper carry 1 vs 9 champion, run them down. Riven as well, insane amount of damage and mobility. Kha'Zix, Lee Sin still 2 of the best junglers in the game. High snowballing, ganking potential. They just hyper, like every good jungler is playing or abusing these champions. All these pro players, if they are trying to push an account to challenger really quickly from unranked, they just spam Kha'Zix, Lee Sin. Because these champions have, like, they just have so much ganking pressure in the early game. Just turbo snowballing the game and then hyper carrying. Next one is gonna be Yone. I think Yone jungle is pretty solid in my opinion. His ganks are not bad, his jungle is decent, his late game carry potential is very good actually. If you get like 1-2 kills in the early game, you get like your first 2 core items, he's becoming insanely strong. Echo got nerfed in the jungle, but I think he is still S tier in my opinion. His jungle clear, the first jungle clear speed is gonna be weaker, but his carry potential once he has 3 items is still very good. Gragas, very strong AP jungler with tons of damage. Morgana, one of the fastest jungle clear speeds in the game. Very solid pick that you can go into any team composition because she is such a safe champion. Just poke them down and then just power farm and poke them down, doing tons of damage. Sinchao, great jungler, doing tons of damage, is tanky as well, decent ganker. Jarvan, high jungle pressure in the early game, he can just gank left and right, and then he's also good in team fighting, in team fights, but then he falls off in my opinion. He kinda falls off later on and you rely on the teammates. Nunu is very similar to Lee Sin, that he can just spam gank left and right, is tanky in team fights, provides a lot of utility, crowd control, but he kind of falls off and he relies on his teammates as well, and his jungle clear speed is not that good. Evelynn is got the nerf, but I don't think it's that big. She is actually a very strong solo queue champion, but I feel like it's not. I feel like it's a high skill ceiling to make her work consistently in high elo. I think she's very good at abusing players with 0 map awareness because you have the invisibility and you can spam gank left and right. Next one is gonna be Vi. Vi has one of the best jungle clear speeds, is decent at ganking with the first ability and with the ultimate, but I just feel like she doesn't have the insane 1 vs 9 carry potential. Next one is gonna be Aurelia. Aurelia is a pretty good jungler, has good damage, not the greatest ganks, but pretty decent carry potential in team fights. But obviously, it's a champion that relies on snowballing, and there are some team compositions that are super hard for Aurelia to play against. Jay is solid jungler, tons of damage, good poking. Diana, early game not the quickest, but very good team fighting. Fizz early game not the greatest early game ganker and jungle clear speed, but his carry potential once he has 3 items is very good. Fiora in my opinion very strong right now. You just need to focus on farming. She's a great duelist in the early game, so she can snowball in skirmishes. And she doesn't have the greatest ganks and maybe not the greatest team fights, but once you have 3 items, you basically just run them down front to back doing tons of damage. Camille received a buff. It's gonna make her jungle clear speed a little bit better, but in the end, I feel like her jungle tempo is just really bad right now. Yes, if you use your ultimates correctly and you try to scale, you have good gank potential with the ultimate, you have good scaling, but I feel like against a high tempo jungler like, let's say, Evelynn, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, you will struggle because you're really slow on the map right now. With the E nerf, with the jungle clear nerf. Gwen is a worse version of Shyvana, I would say. Her jungle clear speed got nerfed in this patch as well. The passive damage got nerfed. She's still very strong in the late game with 3+ items, but you need to focus on farming, and you are definitely not the greatest ganker. Nautilus very slow in the jungle and very slow on the map, but overall he's very tanky and has crazy ganks. Pantheon, hyper snowbally champion, very strong in the early game but falls off completely. Graves is a champion that's the exact opposite. In the early game he is super bad, super slow jungle clear speed in my opinion. And then on top of that you need a lot of items to make him work, and he's not the greatest in the team fights. Renekton overall pretty solid, decent jungle clear speed, decent ganker, and also decent in team fights. Sion, decent jungle clear speed, very good in team fights as a meat shield and providing crowd control. Not the greatest ganker though, obviously. Set, overall pretty solid, decent jungle clear speed, good in team fights. Rengar right now doesn't have the greatest carry potential because they nerfed him so many times and he just doesn't fit the meta right now. I just feel like he's hard to pull off in team fights. Darius, A tier, decent, but everything about him is decent, and he still has pretty good pretty good carry potential in team fights against certain team compositions. Like I said, high mobility, high poke compositions are the pain in the ass for Darius. Rammus, in my opinion, is actually a very good early game ganker, is good in team fights, but a very slow paced jungler in terms of jungle clear speed. If you are not pulling off any successful ganks in the early game, you will be behind in gold a lot of fucking times, by a lot. Let's say I am Rammus, I'm playing against Shyvana. Okay, maybe I will get 1 or 2 ganks off, and hopefully we are getting kills, but if not, the Shyvana, she's gonna outscale me like crazy, and then she has like 15,000 gold while I'm sitting at 9,000 gold. So you guys can see the Shyvana's gonna hyper carry, and you're just the guy that jumps in and tries to taunt and prays, okay, my bot lane, please do damage, please carry me. That's Rammus. Next one is gonna be Jax. Jax early game, absolutely bad. Jungle clear speed, not that good, but definitely one of the best scaling champions and very good in team fights once he has like 3-4 items. I mean, it's a hyper carry champion. Same applies for Tryndamere, that received a buff by default or indirectly with the lethal tempo and chargeblade buffs. Early game not the greatest, but very good scaling. Master Yi, it's a coin flip. Early game, not that good, but he has the potential to hyper carry. If he gets going, gets a few early kills, but at the end of the day he's also still easy to counter with crowd control. Singe early game, not the greatest, but excellent scaling and good gank potential. Shen early game decent, good gank potential, but jungle clear speed overall pretty slow. Amumu very easy to punish in the early game, super weak. Overall still good in team fights though. I know that actually champions like Cannon and Amumu have one of the highest win rates because they are very easy to play, and you just press one button and you fulfilled your value in team fights. So that's why they have high win rates, because they are on average easy to play and have decent value thanks to the ultimate. But yeah, if you play against a high tempo jungler, he's just gonna gank left and right, and then he's gonna invade your ass, he's gonna skirmish, he's always gonna contest every thing that you wanna farm, and then you can't do anything as a Amumu because you're very weak early on. Next one is gonna be mid lane. Okay, let's get started with the mid lane. Yasuo received the huge buff, buffing his base AD damage and the ultimate, and on top of that they're buffing lethal tempo and chargeblade. So guess what? This champion in the right hands, if you are good on this champion and you have mastered him, this champion is S plus tier right now. Super strong. And I don't know, I always tell you guys this, base AD buffs are crazy because his auto attacks are gonna do more damage in the early game. All of his abilities are gonna do more damage in the early game as well. We have seen what happened when they buffed the base AD of Jax, because it makes him so much stronger in the early game and also in the jungle, because his jungle play speed is gonna be better. But I mean, you could probably play Yasuo in the jungle, but you don't have to. Just play mid lane right now. There are some team compositions that are hard for him, but I think high skills healing champion, if you are an average Yasuo player, if you're playing Yasuo on the level like Darkbreaker, then just S tier. Probably, if you're Darkbreaker Yasuo, maybe just A tier. But if you are a good Yasuo player, S plus tier. Right now, let's say you have a Wukong, you have a Rakan, you have Alistar, you have Gragas, then 3 items Yasuo is insanely good. And also, you can use like a protobelt, a flash combo to knock them up or something with the Q3. You can also do your own knockups, obviously. You don't have to rely on others, but if you have the right setup, even easier for you and even better. Akali, with the new buffs on the items, Riftmaker got buffed. They buffed Infinity Hop on the last patch. Akali still S plus tier, super strong, insane assassin. Kassadin got nerfed, but in my opinion, he's still one of the best scaling champions in the late game, doing tons of damage. Ahri, I think, yeah, Ahri received a slight nerf, but it doesn't matter too much to her. She's still an amazing assassin with tons of mobility. Diana, great assassin, great duelist, and also absolutely amazing in the mid lane, thanks to her teamfight potential. She has one of the best teamfight potential, thanks to her ultimate. You mark everyone with the moonlight and then you can dash back and forth to everyone and just destroy them. Katarina, in my opinion, one of the best mid laners. We know, hey, Riftmaker is getting buffed, Infinity Orb is stronger right now, and Katarina is super strong in the right hands. Especially, you guys know, you get one reset and you just wipe them all. I always say this and it still applies. In low elo, very easy to pull it off. In high elo, also still works. Aurelia, one of the best duelist in the game and insane 1 vs 9 carry potential, high skills healing though. Karma received a nerf, let's put a star on her, but in my opinion she's still very good because they only touched her own shield, I mean her own movement speed and the second ability, and the second ability really doesn't matter. The main components that make Karma so good are her ultimate and her poking damage. The poking mantra damage is cracked, doing tons of damage. Yone in the mid lane, in my opinion, S tier, very solid, strong, but early game he is not the greatest and he struggles against a lot of poking matchups. Pyke received the buff and right now, yeah, he's pretty strong in the right hands. Roaming machine and the ultimate, reset left and right, very good to clean up team fights. Gragas, overall a very solid mid laner with good damage and good catch potential. Corki, very good team fighting champion with tons of damage. Galio, a very good tanky utility AP champion. Good in team fights, good poke damage and provides a lot of crowd control as well. And that's the ultimate to join team fights. Akshan has one of the best team fights or team fight potential thanks to his second ability that can revive people. He also does tons of damage because he's crit based and he has one of the best early game laning phases in the game. Fizz is a great assassin, struggles in the early game maybe, but 3 items you are just one-shotting people left and right. Jace, yeah, very solid poking champion, strong in the early game. Orianna and Ziggs are absolute fantastic utility based mages with tons of poking damage. Sinch, Pretty good right now, especially now you have you can run Riftmaker, you can run Cosmic Drive, you can run Mandate, which are all very good on him. Early game, he might not be the greatest, but I think he does more than fine. With second wind, fleet of footwork, he skates like a truck, he has very good skirmish potential and catch potential as well. Zed, one of the best duelists, great assassin and great split pusher, still does tons of damage in team fighting, or why do I always say team fighting? In team fights. Next one is gonna be Twisted Fate. Has decent crowd control with the gold card, great roaming potential with the ultimate, so he has pretty good snowball potential to catch people off. Lucian, one of the best early games, laning faces, very strong duelist in the early game, and tons of damage overall in team fights and high mobility. Veigar, very good in team fights, good crowd control if you can pull him off correctly, front to back, with the right team composition. Bad roaming though, bad early game, but one of the best scaling champions. Echo also a weak early game, but one of the best scaling and very good team fighting. Brand in the early game, pretty solid, but bad roaming, but overall decent team fight potential. Aurelion Sol, high skill ceiling, not the easiest to play, early game pretty weak, but he has great roaming potential overall, and his team fights can be very good. When everyone is bunching up for Dragon or everyone is bunching up for Baron, Aurelion Sol can pretty much 1 vs 9 the team fight if he lands a good star onto them, stuns them all, and then he does tons of damage. Any overall great carry potential. Thanks to her ultimate with the protobot or with the flash, she can catch people off guard. Overall in the early game pretty weak though and bad roaming, and she doesn't have like the insane long range consistent poke damage. She's more like pretty much like an assassin, where you're just jumping in, land the sexy ultimate and just one shot people without any counterplay. Next one is gonna be Garen. Garen overall a very solid tank in the mid lane. If you guys need a tank, like if you guys don't know, I think in competitive, Garen is like S+ tier in the mid lane. Because everyone's running APCs. And Garen is absolutely crazy against the current mid lane meta in competitive. Like you have Zed in the mid lane, you have AD champions in the mid lane, and Garen is very very good against those champions, and he's also super solid against AP champions in the mid lane. It's just hard to kill him, and he provides a lot of value in team fights. Morgana, weak early game, bad roamer, bad wave clear in the early game. In the late game, overall, she does pretty fine, has decent poke damage, has good crowd control with the bind, with the ultimate, but she's pretty slow paced. And like I said, the thing is, what I always say about mid laners in solo queue, the early game is very important because you are winning the matchup, you're pushing the wave in, and then you're roaming and you're trying to snowball left and right, try to join the scuttle, create priority, invade, etc. And I think champions that can do that are much better than champions that have to scale. Whereas solo queue, a lot of games are decided in the early game. Like you're snowballing, you get everyone else ahead, and then you're just winning the game. Sometimes you don't get to scale. That's the biggest thing that people don't realize. But at the same time, I know how Kale is 57% in China. Don't ask me. Don't ask me. He's the highest win rate champion. What do I have Pantheon with the star here? Pantheon, early game, very very strong, great snowballing champion that can snowball left and right with the ultimate ganking there and there, but he falls off like a truck. Every time I do a tier list, it's the same explanation for this champion, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change. Cannon actually very high win rate on the based on the Chinese API. I guess his team fighting is just good. His early game is solid. His wave clear is kinda shit though, I would say, in the early game. But yes, his ultimate is cracked. It's actually funny how like the easy champions have the highest win rates. What is it? Amumu, Amumu, Cannon have the highest win rates. Then we have Ramos as well, because he's such a... I think it's because people only pick Ramos when they are full AD comp, and then Ramos just wins against AD comps very easily. Because, let's say they are 4 AP, you're not picking Ramos. When do you pick Ramos as a Ramos one-trick pony? You pick Ramos only when they're like full AD. Or anyone else who's... There are a lot of people that only play Ramos when they see, okay, yeah, Ramos is perfect here, okay, I'm gonna pick Ramos. And that's how his win rate is getting inflated, because he's usually only picked when the team comp favors him. But yeah, Cannon surprises me, but I think it's just because he's very easy to play. And press ultimate and you provide a lot of value overall. Lux, in my opinion, pretty solid right now with the binds, with the damage. And I would just say in the early game she might not be the greatest, and she struggles against a lot of matchups in the 1v1. Not the greatest roaming potential, but pretty solid team fights. Lux ultimate, binds, etc. Good catch potential as well, similar to Annie. Seraphine, very weak at everything, honestly. She honestly, in the mid and late game team fights, she has the ultimate, which can be devastating. So she is pretty similar to Cannon, but Cannon has much better early game than Seraphine. And it's much easier to punish and destroy Seraphine 1v1. Kayle, one of the best late game scaling champion in the game, has the highest win rate in China in solo queue. So there must be something that she has. And I think it's just, yes, her early game is bad, but the hyper carry potential that she has in the late game just makes up for it, I guess. And in the mid lane, she doesn't get punished as hard as in the Baron lane. Ashe, overall utility pick in the mid lane. 1v1, she struggles against a lot of matchups. Not the greatest roamer, but she has some nice catch potential with the ultimate. Let's go to ADCs. ADCs pretty much received a buff because they buffed Lethal Tempo and Chargeblade. So, I mean, at the end of the day, pretty much all the champions here received the buff because all of them are running Lethal Tempo, or should I say almost all of them are running Lethal Tempo or Chargeblade. So Samira, Vayne, Lucian, Saya, Caitlyn, Kai'Sa, Jinx, Draven, Corki, Tristana, they're all running Chargeblade, and most of them are running a Lethal Tempo as well. So they all received the buff. So it doesn't change in the end because everyone is getting buffed. But yeah, Samira, in my opinion, still one of the most broken champions in the game. People that are saying she is not that good have no idea how to play her, honestly. I don't play ADCs. I don't play Samira. And every time I touched this champion, I went legendary in Challenger. I play this champion against Challenger players and I go legendary. And I don't play ADCs. I don't even play Samira. I have 5 games on her. 5 games on her in Challenger with 100% win rate. She is broken. And I played her before the buff even. I've played this champion before the buff. So she is even more cracked right now. Like, do you guys realize the second ability blocks any projectiles? Do you understand how broken that is? Anytime someone dies, she gets a dash reset. And her ultimate, if they don't have crowd control, left, and you use your ultimate, and they can't cancel you, you just wipe them all, and with Bloodthirster and your sustain, you are not dying. This champion is the ADC Katarina, basically. But yeah, people are like, she's not that broken, because so many people are feeding, because they're bad. Just because other people are bad on here doesn't mean this champion is bad. It just means they don't know how to unlock the full potential of the champion. While I'm talking about the full potential of a champion. So, if Doom is playing Samira, what's gonna happen? 20-0 pentakill. Congratulations. It's not broken, by the way. Next one is gonna be Vayne. Vayne, one of the best hyper carry champions, high mobility, tons of damage. I hate this champion. Lucian, same. Lucian, literally same explanation. Ezreal, almost the same explanation. But early game, he is definitely not that good. But he has tons of mobility and tons of poking damage in the mid-late game once he has like 3 items. Insane self-peeling hyper carry. But yeah, he doesn't run lethal tempo, he's running conk. So he doesn't benefit from chargeblade and lethal tempo, but he's still S+ tier in my opinion. Saya, she is a very strong team fighting champion thanks to her ultimate and thanks to the feathers, because she can root every single champion in a team fight, especially if you are baiting them and you are luring them in, they're chasing you, you pull the feathers in, everyone's getting rooted. And they take so much damage. The longer the teamfight goes, the more feathers she's applying. And when she puts the feathers back, they just all take tons of damage. She has probably the best Uno reverse card in a teamfight. Uno reverse card, feathers! Feathers, come back! Boom! And she has insane self-peeling thanks to her ultimate. Let's say you have Guardian Angel, you have your ultimate, and you have stasis. Do you understand how fucking hard it is to kill a Saya, especially if she's fat? Very, very hard. She has amazing self-peel, and she has the feathers for root as well. Caitlyn, one of the best ADCs because she is so consistent. Consistency is key in solo queue. One of the highest range auto attacks in the game. Very good at every stage and super safe in teamfights as well, and tons of damage. And she also has a dash, by the way. Kai'Sa, tons of damage, insane assassination power as an ADC. She has a shield, she has a jump, she has invisibility. Do I need to tell you guys anything else? And Jinx. Jinx is not the greatest in the early game, but she definitely has insane hyper carry potential in teamfights. She gets one reset, she has a Lulu. Everyone just dies. Reset, reset. That's Jinx with her minigun. Varus overall a super consistent, solid poking champion that provides a lot of crowd control with the ultimate as well. Good self-peel. But not the greatest mobility. Draven, I know Doom, for example, rates Draven S+ tier, but Doom is Doom. Doom can pull off a Draven. Draven is, yes, one of the best early game champions and one of the best snowballing champions in the game, especially as an ADC. You don't need a good support. You can carry the laning phase on your own. But high skill ceiling and also hard to pull off. You need to master this champion perfectly, spacing wise and positioning wise in teamfights, because you don't have any dashes. So also by the way, it's much easier to kill a Draven than a Vayne, Lucian or Ezreal, in my opinion, because like I said, you don't have any dashes and he's high skill ceiling. If you are Doom, okay, S+ tier, but if you're not Doom, probably S tier. Am I right? Like, how many people are good at Draven and how many people can pull off an insane Draven? There are not that many insane Draven players, but yeah, Draven definitely can be S+ tier in the right hands, because he's probably the strongest ADC in the early game. Corki, insane teamfights overall. Like, he does tons of damage and is great at teamfighting as well. Next one is gonna be Tristana. Very good in the late game, is same explanation as Jinx. Early game, not the greatest, but she has very good hyper carry potential in the late game if you get to that point and you have a lot of items as well. Nasus in combination with Senna, that should be the explanation, by the way. If you are running Nasus Senna, this is very good in solo queue. Tons of damage, tons of utility, and very tanky as well. Jin and Miss Fortune actually have very high win rate in China, but I guess it's because they are strong in the early game and easy to play. But I don't like them. You guys know why? Early game, they are very good, yes. They are also easy to play, yes. That's, for example, why I play Miss Fortune, because she's very easy to play for me. But they fall off in the late game. And I know some people say, they still do good damage. You can't compare a Vayne or Ezreal hyper carry damage in the late game to a Jin or Miss Fortune. These two champions, for example, will carry teamfights much harder and they will do way more damage than you are doing in a teamfight. It is what it is. Jin is early mid-game champion. He's not good in late game. Same applies for Misfortune. Misfortune can be good, but most of the times the other ADC is gonna outcarry you. That's my reasoning. Ashe, overall, I think she provides great utility value with the second ability, keep slowing them down. Then you have the bird for some scouting, you have the ultimate to catch people. But overall, she doesn't have the hyper carry insane damage in team fights. Karma is a great APC, tons of damage as well. Lux as well, doesn't have the same mobility, but has the binding. Then we have Orianna and Ziggs that are super strong APC champions in team fights. But APCs are more like competitive picks, that's why I'm just putting them A tier. But yeah, they are very good in team fights, doing tons of damage. Like, they have very consistent damage in team fights overall. Brand, overall, just a weaker version of Orianna and Ziggs. Less range and weaker in the early game. Is he weaker in the... Yeah, I would say he's easier to punish because he's short range in comparison. He's not as safe as them. Then Morgana, pretty weak in the early game like I said, and she doesn't provide the same damage as them. She provides decent utility though. Senna ADC. I think I'm not the biggest fan of Senna ADC. I think she's much better as a support. And she's very situational pick. Weak in the early game, but pretty good scaling. But yeah, that's a bit for ADC, and let's move on to supports. Okay, for supports, Karma received the nerf, but in my opinion, I think she is still one of the best supports, especially with the sickle. It's very easy for her to scale and do tons of damage. Like, go for the AP Karma build and you can carry games on your own. They didn't nerf her damage. As long as they don't nerf her damage, she's gonna be S plus tier. Her mantra Q damage is way too high, and her ultimate is way too strong, and her mantra shield is still good, by the way. They didn't touch the mantra shield. They touched her shield movement speed only for herself. Doesn't matter too much. Next one is gonna be Pyke. Pyke got buffed, and it's gonna make him much better right now. Actually, he's gonna be a better roamer, and I actually don't know why they did it. I think Pyke is very good solo queue champion in terms of, okay, I'm gonna roam, I'm gonna make some plays happen, I'm gonna catch people, and he's also good in team fights thanks to his ultimate to wipe people and just reset people. Like, you just, if they're low life, you kill them, you kill them, you kill them, and everyone's getting gold, by the way. Because if Pyke gets a kill, your allies get also gold. Next one is gonna be Lux. I'm starting to become a Lux fan, by the way. If you guys have watched my stream, I'm Snipebreaker. I am Snipebreaker. I am the best Lux in the universe. You guys haven't seen it yet. I am the best Lux. I show you I am a much better Lux than these 2000 Lux OTPs that can land their skill shots. Watch my new Lux video, that's coming out pretty soon, by the way. But I mean, obviously I'm just kidding. But Lux is actually a very good carry right now, thanks to the relic. Or should I say, thanks to the sickle. Because you get so much gold, and then you get Ludens, and you just one-shot people on your own. It's actually funny, sometimes I'm not even farming the wave, but I'm still end up having more gold than my ADC. Because a lot of times you're just sniping people with the ultimate and you're securing the kills. And then the sickle value gives you so much gold as well. Gregor's overall very solid support. I love this guy. Tons of crowd control, very tanky as well, and great playmaking potential. But this reasoning applies for Thresh, Rakan, Alistar, Nautilus as well, by the way. Thresh, great playmaker, especially in the early game, an absolute fantastic roamer that can carry on the map and has great pick-up potential. Same applies for Rakan, that has the knock-up, that has the AoE charm. Then Alistar, who has the AoE knock-up, who has the ultimate that makes him super tanky, great roamer as well. Nautilus has the ultimate to knock up someone, then he gets super tanky, and on top of that, he can root people in teamfight left and right. Because the passive applies basically for every champion. Every time you hit a new champion, root. Like, he has very good value in teamfights, and he's just so tanky and has so much crowd control. Nami, great peeling champion with tons of crowd control and very good playmaking potential thanks to the bubble and thanks to the ultimate. Lulu is an amazing enchanter that can buff people up, so they just run them down. Let's say you play Lulu with Shyvana, Lulu Riven, Lulu Vayne, Lulu with any hyper carry ADC like Jinx or Tristana. They just start running people down, and she has a silence as well. If you use it correctly, it's a pain in the ass. Some people will now say, it's not the silence, you're transforming them. It's the same basically. Okay, next one is gonna be Yuumi. Yuumi received a huge nerf, so instead of S+, in my opinion, she is a strong S tier right now. Can still be pretty good in team fights and boosting one single person up, and the ultimate is still good in team fights as well. Ashe overall, Ashe support is becoming much more popular right now. The Ashe Lux combo is actually pretty disgusting with the double sickle, tons of crowd control and utility value. Senna support in the right team setup against. I mean, if you have the right team comp, Senna is obviously always good, but please don't be the selfish Senna player that is first picking here, or be the selfish Senna player that is last picking here, even though you already have an ADC. Double ADC is not good, and if you play Senna with another ADC, then you're trolling, and honestly, you deserve to get reported for that. It is so troll, by the way. Let's say you have a Lee Sin jungle, you have Riven top lane, you have, I don't know, you have Ahri or Zed mid lane, and then you have Jinx plus Senna. How shitty is that, by the way? How shitty is that? You have no frontline, you're not a poke composition, and then you're going crit Senna as well. You're just running your teammates down with that pick. Honestly, people that do that deserve to get reported. But yeah, Senna in the right team setup provides a lot of utility and can be very good. Jenna, great peeling champion, and very strong in the early game. Leona, very strong in the early game, especially against enchanters. Doesn't provide as much value as the S tier engaging supports though. Same applies for Galio and Braum, that are more situational. Galio works the best against AP compositions, and Braum works the best against poking compositions. I'm actually moving upset because I've seen that set has become really popular and competitive, not solo queue necessary. And I think it's more effect of this champion has high skill ceiling to make plays happen, and you need the follow up. Also, if you don't get it early on, your tank value is not as good as the others. The others have way more tankiness with less gold, by the way. Blitzcrank is a hit and miss. Even if you hit your hooks, you're sometimes not winning the game. Like, let's say you're landing a hook on ADC and sometimes you're still not winning it, even though you're doing so well with your hooks. And a lot of times people are just so bad at Blitzcrank, I don't want to rate him higher, because this champion requires good hook ability. Next one is gonna be Soraka. It's a very situational champion that can be very good into some team compositions, but I don't like her in solo queue. Because you need the right team setup where you have a lot of poking, either a lot of poking or you have like decent frontline at least. Annie, very weak in the early game, has some good teamfight potential. Same applies for Sona, Seraphine. I don't think they are good supports. I think, yes, they have some nice value in teamfights thanks to their ultimate, but they are pretty weak in the laning phase. And they're easy to punish. I think that's the biggest issue. They are easy to punish early on. And they don't provide as much value as other champions in team fights. And they don't have great peeling. Also, not that much mobility. Some games you have the right team composition. You have great frontline. You can stay safe in the back. You land the sexy ultimate. Then they can be good. Sure. Shen, early game. Kinda needs to snowball, kinda weak. He has the taunt though, and he has the ultimate, but overall, I'm not a fan of these pseudo Baron lane supports because they need a lot of gold to be tanky, and they don't provide as much utility. Let's say Alistar. Alistar has 60% damage reduction on his ultimate for free, and he can knock up 5 people very easily. Why would you go Shen over Alistar, for example? Why would you go Shen over Rakan, for example? These champions are much easier to play, and they are much more tanky than a Shen. And they don't need as much gold as well. Next one is gonna be Singed. Singed, super cheesy pick. Can be pretty good against enchanters to catch them off guard, and he's pretty scaling, but overall very weak in the early game. Same applies for Morgana. Morgana is weak in the early game, has some value with the black shield, I guess, and with the binding, but overall I'm not a fan of Morgana support. I think in the jungle she is the best, and even mid lane she is better than a support or APC Morgana. But yeah, that's gonna be it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think I talked for more than 1 hour, by the way. I think the biggest change is probably, I guess the Yasuo buff is the biggest change. Then we have the lethal tempo chargeblade, which is gonna make, I think Tryndamere is gonna be better. And it's automatically also buffing Yone, by the way. We have Yone right now. But yeah, overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. Make sure to write down your feedback in the comments, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed it. But I see you next time. Bye bye.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.